We also, of course, asked this focus group, or not we, but James,
Yes.
on behalf of us and jail partners, asked this focus group how they feel about the various Trump indictments, and also, and gets really interesting, whether or not they would still vote for him even if he is actually literally in prison at the time of the general election. Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
What do you think of these charges, the charges that are happening? How do we feel about those?
It's nothing but a lynching by the Democrats. They're so fearful of him that they're going after him left and right. And this has been going on, 7, 8 years? So it's definitely just a lynching, and they're just afraid of him. That's why they're doing it. Otherwise, they'd leave him alone.
As far as the charges go, I mean, I don't have a huge stock in the government conspiracies being like, oh, this is all against me. It's a witch hunt. I'm like, no, it isn't. You broke the law. You're being indicted. It's surprising to me that he's even a candidate. I'm all for having a Republican candidate to stop all this nonsense spending, but him is just, if you go to jail, just like everybody else, it makes it very clear that you are not above the law.
I think some of it is a witch hunt for sure. And I think some of it are legitimate claims, like him telling, the governor of Georgia or the secretary of state of Georgia that he needs to find votes. I mean, the president calling someone like that is obviously trying to intimidate and influence the election. And that's something we should all stand up for and say that's wrong. I wish the charges weren't there, because it makes folks like our friends here in the back row really solidify behind him. And he's been able to turn it into that sort of, if I think someone back there said, if they can come after me, they can come after you. Well, you're not intimidating secretaries of state, so you're probably not in trouble. But I think it's bad, because I think it helps the Trump supporters circle around Trump and make it look like he's a victim, which I think he likes.
In one word, stupid. I just think it's stupid. I think they're wasting a ton of time, and yeah, they want the money, and so.
Welcome to the banana republic of America. This is what other countries do to their candidates. I mean, yeah, if there are things that are done wrong, I think some of these things that were done wrong, they wouldn't make any issue out of it if it wasn't a Republican or Trump.
It's deliberately done by, I think, actually on a more global level, to have a candidate who could fix America taken out so we can be kept under somebody's thumb.
Who's doing that?
Probably Bill Gates. I don't know.
If he does get convicted, if he ends up in jail, would you still vote for him in the general election?
I would vote for him, because other politicians have done their political duties from jail.
I definitely would vote for him. You have to. It just, everyone here agreed that something's going on crooked with what they're doing to him. So how can you believe anything that's going on in the courts, or these affidavits or anything else they're going after him for?
I would vote for him, and I would hope that the truth would eventually come out.
So thinking ahead to that general election, let's assume it's Trump versus Biden, and Trump is fighting that election from jail. Would anyone here be put off voting for Trump for that reason?
I would vote for anybody who wasn't Biden, whether I liked them or not.
I think that it would be odd to vote for somebody that's in jail, somebody who's supposed to be running our country, the commander-in-chief from jail. It doesn't make sense to me.
Put your hands up if you would vote for Trump in that election if he was in jail. Dana, you're a no. How come?
How can you govern from jail? I think even if it was not a fair process, I just don't see how you can govern effectively when you're taken out of communication that way.
I mean, that's quite significant, right? We've got 4 registered Republicans or independents who might lean Republican in this room, and half of you are saying wouldn't vote for Donald Trump if he was the nominee in a general election.
It doesn't matter what you say. You could say, what if he's dead, and they'd still vote for him. I mean, there is no line, right? There is no line.
Anyone want to come back on that?
How about if Biden's the nominee and he's in a hospital, a mental hospital, still going to vote for him then?
Didn't really address my question.
See a little bit of tension there
Fired.
on that,
I like
on that
it.
question.
You know, they're very respectful to each other.
Yeah, they
I
definitely are.
respect it. I really like that.
I mean, you
Yeah.
had I think it was a very representative group. I mean, James broke this down for us yesterday when we had him in studio, and he was talking about, you know, you've really got three groups of voters here. You have the hard Trump, like, you know, all the folks who were like, I'd vote for him from jail. I don't care. It doesn't matter. In fact, I feel like I'd have to vote for him if he's in jail. You've got the group that is like open to Trump and likes a lot of what he did, but they're also open to other candidates. And they have that like normie instinct of, I don't know about having a president who's in prison. Not sure, that might be too far from me. And then you have the two who are anti-Trump, you know, who are like, no, he did something wrong. Of course he's being held accountable. And, you know, these people over here would say they'd vote for him even if he was dead.
I would note even the DeSantis guy, though, he was like, well, I think some of the charges are a witch hunt. I mean, yeah, I think that, see, four of them saying they will vote for him even this early just makes that, in my opinion, I think a lot of those people would vote for him. So, like, some people say they may not, but then when it came down to it, you know, the actual choice, it also could be ambiguous, you know, jail, like, he could be sentenced, but he may not actually be in jail then at the time. Then if he becomes president, he can make the case that he won't go to jail, which, you know, who the hell knows how that's going to work with the Supreme Court. I do think that the vast majority of the people in the room would end up voting for him as a result. And the fact that, though, that he does have that, again, of the four people who said that they wouldn't, they all disagree on who they want to choose and on which way they want. You have one Burgum person who's like pro-choice. Then you have another person, guy here is like DeSantis. And then this other lady who, I believe she's the one who said pandemic, but she's also not the one who was going to vote for Trump.
There
like,
was
none of
one
them
who,
agree
like,
on anything.
Vivek,
yeah,
who
the Vivek
was
lady.
one of the women there in the front. With the dark brown hair, who said that she couldn't get her head around like voting for how could he govern if he's in prison. I think that was the Vivek supporter.
Yes.
So listen, I think I agree with, in terms of the primary, a lot of these folks are going to end up voting for Trump, or they're going to end up dividing between Vivek and Ron DeSantis and Nikki, whoever, right? Doug Burgum, apparently. The bigger question for me, though, is in a general election, if this legal trouble for Trump and the trials are ongoing, and I don't even know if the timeline is going to be such that we'll have convictions or results by that time, but it is possible. It's possible he's awaiting sentencing. How is that going to weigh even on some of the people who are kind of sympathetic to him? Even if you have, like, that's a room of Republican primary voters, right? These are some of the most committed, even the ones who, you know, claim they're independents. These are committed Republican voters who show up in elections, who show up to focus groups, et cetera. And if half of them are saying, I don't know, I can't vote for him if he's in prison, I do think that's a problem for him in a general election that may not be showing up in the polls right now.
I'm excited to see a focus group, you know, or polling, all that from the actual general election in genuine swing states, because I agree with you. I think that there is far more actual independent, like people who are not going to vote in a primary process, who might be very different whenever it comes to real charges, prison, or any of that. I've said this, you know, and I know people don't like to hear it, especially if they're very online, but, you know, a lot of people in this country still do trust the justice system. Don't ask me why, but they do. A lot of people still have, you know, a real they have a reverence for the courts and for the idea of like jury trials and prosecutors and the law and all of those ideas. So, you know, if Trump is convicted of something, like, well, wow, you know, clearly that's wrong. The other side of that, though, is that they had that trust, and if it is blatantly political and they see it as such, which most people do, well, it can erode trust in said justice system. So I can argue it both ways. I think it's going to have an electoral impact no matter what.
You know what was interesting to me was that lady I was referencing before, who I think is the Vivek supporter, and she said, even if I feel like the process is unfair, it's almost like a level of national embarrassment.
Yeah.
Like, I can't vote for this guy to be president from prison. Like, that's just too it's too weird, it's too outside of the norm. I just can't go there. And, you know, a lot of traditional Republican voters, even though Trump was the guy that upset the apple cart and, you know, anti-institutional and all of this stuff, you still have a lot of Republican voters who are, you know, personally conservative, meaning that they actually like some of the norms and for things to stay within the lines. And I think that's the visceral reaction that you're getting, especially from the two women there in the front row who were like, I just can't go there. Like, even if I think the process is unfair, even if I like some of what he did when he was president, even if I'm considering voting for him in the primary, which I think both of them are open to voting for him in the primary, that's a bridge too far. I just can't do it. I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's a lot there, guys. And like I've said, one of my favorite things about this is just hearing people show, don't tell, like some people are contradictory, but this is how people really think about the election. And a lot of people who are very, very tapped into politics often forget that there's millions of people who actually vote, and the stuff that they digest is not necessarily the same. It's snippets, they're living their daily lives, and this is a snapshot at the very least of what we can look at.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.